more than a decade, I've wanted to make YouTube videos. Not as a hobby, but as a way to build something I create for myself, and maybe find a career that lets me be me. Creating content always felt like the best way to do that, and I've experimented with a bunch of different styles and forms. I've done some photography, I made a podcast or five, I've streamed, and I've even written a few crappy books. But nothing has really scratched that itch in a way I wanted it to, at least not completely. Vlogging was the closest I ever got. I get a genuine satisfaction from sharing my brain squeezings with the world, and as I went along, I started to incorporate more and more art. I managed to even connect with a few people on a real level, and that was nice. But once I started working on what I told myself was my real career, my creativity got burned up. I was spent by the time I came home, and I lost all will to do anything. Other than the occasional bursts of a few days, I let go of all of my drawing and writing for a decade. It just vanished. And that's where I stayed. I was working in government communications and marketing, a job that I convinced myself I loved, and it was slowly destroying me. That's not entirely fair. I can't blame the job completely. I mean, a big part of the problem was the undiagnosed bipolar disorder and generalized anxiety disorder, which all got compounded by the lockdown isolation during the COVID years. So I was there for 10 years, and the first 7 of those years, I didn't mind using up all my creativity at work. I made a lot of great things. I believed in the message I was putting out, and creativity was a big part of my job back then. I was on a team that was new and finding its own feet. We worked on a ton of different projects, and I got to really stretch in a lot of ways. Hell, I got to make a Schoolhouse Rock-style cartoon about filing your taxes. I learned a lot. I was given a chance to grow and experiment, and I was part of a small, tight group. We were allowed to cut out our own path and create our own purpose, and it was actually pretty cool. Those people kept me alive for an entire year of isolation. I will always be grateful to them. Then, when things started to seem a little bit healthier, I got to go back to an office with a brand new administration and leadership. The team I had been part of was split apart, the members all going on to do newer and greater things. Except me. I didn't. I stayed exactly where I was. I stayed where I thought I was supposed to be, where I thought I was needed. The new administration and I don't agree on much. My fundamental core values often felt like they were at odds with theirs. I didn't feel like the agency's new leadership valued what I did. For me, not feeling valuable, feeling like I don't contribute, is one of the most painful sources of my anxiety. It's something that gnaws at my mind almost constantly, and when it is fed, it gets mean. And that was another huge factor in what was driving me down. Back in 2017, I had a pretty massive anxiety attack and was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and, at the time, major depression disorder. I went through a medication roller coaster that kept me afloat for the next 5 years and eventually didn't. Over the course of 2021, I just kept getting worse. At work, I felt like a gear in a machine that didn't quite fit. Everything was grinding me down, emotionally and creatively. At home, I was isolated and alone, exhausted and ruminating on the worst parts of my day. I was in a dark place and finally broke down and did something I should have done a long time ago. I went to therapy. I started seeing a counselor in January of 2022, and I worked hard over the course of that year to get to a better, more stable place. I made a lot of progress, and after a year of weekly visits, my counselor sent me to a new psychiatrist to talk about my diagnosis because she thought I might have the wrong one. The psychiatrist agreed, and my major depression disorder was changed to bipolar disorder type 2. A mood stabilizer was added to my regimen of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. I also learned that SSRIs can actually make bipolar disorder worse, which is why I had to change my medication every couple of years to keep anything resembling sanity. Over the course of 2023, I started to stabilize and kept working with my therapist, and I began to realize just how miserable I was with my job. How soul-crushing it felt. I realized it wasn't going to get better, and no matter how hard I fought, I'd never make a real difference. So, after insult and frustration and pain, I made the decision to quit. I stayed on long enough to help them transition, packed up all of my stuff, and I moved back home. I spent time trying to find a new job and put my education and skills to work, and when the job search got too discouraging, I tried to pivot to helping other people. I have a lot of education in business and training in coaching and communication strategy, and I thought it would be pretty good at helping people use that to grow their own businesses. But I didn't factor in the incredibly overwhelming anxiety I get with the concept of making a cold call to a client. In an effort to calm my mind, I started drawing again. The act of focusing on lines and colors had always been meditative for me, and using it could silence some of the intrusive thoughts in my head and let me refocus. It's where I found my zen. One day, my dad came out to the office to check on me and found me drawing. I told him about how I used it as a way to calm my emotions and how it always felt good to do it. Then he asked me a question I never expected to hear from him. Why don't you just do that? And that was all it took to break open this dam of desire I'd been building for most of my adult life. I needed to find a way to make a creative career a reality, and I took all of that business school and experience and dove into the internet to find a way to actually make it work. 4 months later, I'm still trying to find my feet and slowly regrowing my creative brain. I've developed a daily practice to grow my skills and hopefully give me just enough money to survive. I've learned about things like stickers and what a giclée print is. Now I'm ready for this step, this thing I've wanted to do for so long, and I think I've figured out how to make that work in a way that doesn't trigger a crippling fear of being seen inside me. I don't know if this experiment is going to be successful, but I'm going to keep trying at least for the next year. 52 weeks, 52 drawings, 52 stories. It isn't just something I want to do, it's something I need to do. That's what the last few years have taught me. Change is terrifying, but I have to be true to myself and do what takes me closer to who I was meant to be. That means finding a way to keep being creative. And it isn't just a skill I pull out of a toolbox, it is the thing that keeps me alive when the world is dark and I can't find my way. It isn't too late. There are infinite paths out there, and you don't have to keep walking the one you're already on. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this journey and if you've had similar experiences. Are you also a cog that doesn't fit in the machine you've been crammed into? Share your stories in the comments and be sure to give me a thumbs up if you like this idea. Subscribe if you want to follow along. Let's come together to face some fears and embrace change. No matter how nerve-wracking it may be, let's break free together. Maybe we can rediscover exactly who we are. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to take care of yourself, nurture your creativity, and stay hydrated. Until next time, go do something amazing.